I've heard about the 3,000 Wives of Solomon, but have you ever heard about the Sparrow War? Probably not. And it's a damn shame because this bizarre episode of Chinese history is weirder than fiction and has some valuable lessons for modern geopolitics. In the early 1960s, China was engaged in what Mao Zedong called the Great Leap Forward. It was a desperate attempt to rapidly transform China from an agrarian economy into a communist utopia. But it ended up being more like a giant leap backwards with disastrous consequences. It led to the deaths of tens of millions of Chinese people through famine and overwork. Mao was desperate to find a way to save face after the disaster of the Great Leap Forward. And he thought he had the perfect solution. This time, instead of trying to remake China, he would remake nature itself. In 1958, Mao launched the Sparrow Campaign to eradicate sparrows in China. It sounds stupid, and it was. But there was method to his madness. Or at least he thought there was. The problem was sparrows. They were eating all the grain that peasants grew. So, in order to combat this, Mao ordered every single sparrow in China to be killed. This didn't go well. After all, sparrows are birds, and birds can fly away. The campaign was expanded to include every other kind of bird as well. The plan was simple. Every day at precisely 5 p.m., every Chinese citizen was to stand outside and make as much noise as possible. The goal was to drive the birds out of their nests, where they could then be killed by humans. Well, it worked too well. On one day in April 1959, Beijing was plunged into chaos when billions of sparrows flew directly into the heart of the city. People were panicked and confused. Why were so many birds suddenly in the city? It looked like the end of days. Then someone realized the next day, people were told to get ready to kill even more birds. But the sparrows weren't just in Beijing. This happened in cities all across China. And each time people went out to kill the birds, they were met with the same sight: massive flocks of dead birds covering the ground. Within weeks, the campaign had spread to 20 provinces across the country, and hundreds of millions of birds were dead. But the government still hadn't solved the problem. There were still sparrows everywhere. Mao was getting desperate. He turned to the military to solve his bird problem. Total, 2 million soldiers were deployed to hunt down and kill sparrows. They set up barricades to trap the birds, used catapults to hurl rocks at the birds, and according to some reports, they released poisonous gas. By this point, the campaign had taken on a life of its own, and things were getting weird. Soldiers started making scarecrows in the shape of dogs and other animals to fool the sparrows. Some soldiers wore costumes and pretended to be wolves howling at the birds until they fell from the sky exhausted. This, too, failed. Mao wanted results. And since science was clearly not going to get him those results, he decided to turn to pseudoscience. He convened a meeting of the Chinese Academy of Sciences and asked them to explain how the sparrows were able to escape the massive killing operations. To no one's surprise, the scientists were unable to answer this question. What they did discover was something incredibly strange. Sparrows seemed to be appearing out of nowhere. Whole flocks of birds would materialize out of thin air, completely unexplainable. Mao demanded answers. Why were the sparrows coming back? Was this part of a bigger plot? Was America controlling the birds somehow? To answer these crucial questions, Mao turned to a man named Feng Lizzi, a physicist and astronomer who specialized in UFO research. Yes, you heard that right. China's communist government had a UFO research program. Feng Lizzi was brought in to investigate the Sparrow War and see if there was anything extraterrestrial going on. What he discovered was that while the number of sparrows had decreased dramatically in certain areas, they were actually increasing in others. Specifically, the biggest increases were in the poorest regions where farmers needed the sparrows to eat the grain that they had grown. In short, Mao's war on sparrows was having the opposite effect that he had intended. In the poorer parts of China, the sparrows were winning the war. Feng Lizzi went to the government with his findings. The war on sparrows had to stop. The government ignored him. Mao was obsessed with proving that China was a modern, progressive country. What was more modern and progressive than eradicating an entire species? Unfortunately, Feng Lizzi didn't have the authority to stop the war on sparrows. He did, however, have the perfect way to metaphorically put an end to the conflict. Literally putting an end to the conflict. A series of devastating floods in 1959 and 1960 killed thousands of people and wiped out yet more crops. With food shortages becoming worse and worse, peasants across China began to rebel against the Communist Party. This culminated in the autumn of 1962, when thousands of people marched on the streets of Beijing to demand food. It was the largest anti-government demonstration in the history of China. Mao's grip on power was slipping. He needed something, anything to restore his image as a strong leader. And that's when Fang Lizzie came up with the perfect solution. Instead of fighting the sparrows, what if we made them our friends? Mao wasn't sure about this. He'd spent years trying to kill every last sparrow in China. But Fang Lizzie was adamant. This was the only way to stop the food shortage. The government announced that the Sparrow War had been a great success. All across China, farmers were given permission to raise and eat sparrows. For the first time in over 4 years, eating sparrows was no longer a crime in China. People all across the country feasted on roasted sparrows, fried sparrows, stewed sparrows, braised sparrows, candied sparrows, smoked sparrows, and grilled sparrows. Within months, the farmers were eating all the sparrows, and the food shortages were over. While it might seem cruel to use animals as pawns in a political game, the Chinese people had suffered immensely during the Great Leap Forward and the Sparrow War. Millions had starved to death. By switching from killing sparrows to eating sparrows, China avoided a humanitarian catastrophe. Mao Zedong may have been a ruthless dictator, but he knew when he was beaten. He ended the Sparrow War and embraced sparrows because it's always better to be smart than to be right. Mao would go on to launch the Cultural Revolution, which almost destroyed China. You can learn more about that through additional resources. We're making a lot of original content these days, including a series on ancient Rome and the collapse of the Soviet Union. Our studio is basically running 24/7. We're making so much content, in fact, that we don't have time to edit all of it ourselves. That's why we're excited to announce that we've partnered with a new platform. You can watch all of our old videos ad-free and completely free, and there's no additional cost to you. If you're already subscribed to us on another platform, you can now get access to everything we make on Nebula for free. If you're not already subscribed, you can sign up at the website. It's only $2.99 per month. It's less than the price of a cup of coffee. And you'll be supporting independent creators while you're at it. It's honestly one of the best deals on the internet. The thing I love about Nebula is that I don't have to worry about my videos being demonetized or censored. This means I can focus on making the highest quality videos possible without worrying about the algorithm. Nebula also has a ton of original content from creators you already know and love. So the platform is built for serious students of history. We hope you check it out. So I'm here to tell you about a product called Modern Conflicts. They cover contemporary conflicts all around the world. One of my favorites is the ongoing conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan. This is a conflict over the disputed region of Nagorno-Karabakh. The fighting between Armenia and Azerbaijan has been going on for decades. But recently, things have gotten really intense. Modern Conflicts breaks down the key moments in this conflict and explains why it matters. They publish weekly episodes every Wednesday. The latest episode covers Azerbaijan's recent attack on the Armenian border town of Goris. This attack was a major escalation in the conflict. Modern Conflicts broke down the key events and explained why it matters. Another great series on Nebula is Peloponnese. This series covers the ancient history of the Mediterranean and the Black Sea. It's full of crazy stories you won't learn anywhere else. In the most recent episode, for example, you'll learn about the Cimmerians. These guys were an ancient people who lived in the northern Black Sea. They were known for their skill in war and their love of treasure. Honestly, it's one of the coolest shows on the internet. You need to check it out.